Let's begin. We invite you into our circle. If that's you, give us a sign.
This is a scam.
We do not attack the clients. We help people. We give them closure.
You are so weird.
Does she have a lot of problems?
It's nothing too concerning.
What's this?
A Ouija board for work. Spirit, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Who are you talking to?
What? Daddy. Are you there? Who are you?
Your sister's taking you to school today.
I don't want to go! I want to stay here and talk to my friends.
What friends?
I'll show you. Are you here?
Something is happening that we can't understand.
I'm concerned about your girl.
What's this about, Father?
What are you doing? I'm not doing it.
The spirit world is dangerous.
They were watching us all those years.
By using the board, you've opened up a portal.
Want to hear something cool?
Sure.
Do you know what it feels like to be strangled to death? First, you feel the pressure in your throat. And you start to taste something very sour in your mouth. Then, it's like someone lights a match right in the middle of your chest. And that fire grows. It fills your lungs and your throat and all the way behind your eyes. And the last thing you feel is cold. Good night, Romeo. It's just a game.
Elizabeth, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Congratulations on the movie.
Thank you.
A Halloween horror movie. That's pretty awesome.
Makes sense.
Are you a horror movie fan?
Sometimes, when they're good, you know.
Like this one?
Like this one.
What's your favorite horror movie?
I'd have to say The Exorcist, Shining, Firestarter.
Firestarter. That's
Yeah.
one that I don't hear quite often.
Well, I saw that when I was Drew Barry, you know, I think we're probably the same age, so she was a little girl when she made that, and I saw it and I thought, yeah, that's what I want.
How do I get in on this fire starting
people
business?
On fire.
So, how did you get cast in this movie? How did this come to you?
I don't know. The director, Mike Flanagan, had seen a movie that I made 10 years ago called Sweetland. This is the story I was told. And Jason Blum, the producer, one of the producers who runs Blumhouse, knew me from years ago, and I went and had a meeting, and it was one of those wonderful times where you don't have to audition. It's very rare, but and we met and we talked, and then it happened.
And then, so did they have a script at that point? Were they like all ready to go? And
Yeah, they had a script. They were ready to go, and I couldn't believe how good the script was, because usually with, you know, horror movies can be so schlocky or sort of, you know, not well made, and this script was really good.
It's hard for me to tell. I love schlocky and good horror movies. Like I'm all over the map when it comes to my love of horror movies.
Well, schlock can be fun. I mean,
Exactly. And now the kids in this movie, the two girls who play your daughters, they're fantastic. They're really incredible. Especially this girl, though.
well, this one is terrifying. I mean, she's
real
not
life,
even
too?
acting. She's like a 40-year-old woman in real life. Like, it's like I'm talking to someone like a peer. They're both actresses. Like, it wasn't like, oh, we got the kid now. We got bring in the kid. It was like bring the actress to set. I mean, they're both such formidable actresses, and they were very connected, and they just also seem like real children, which so many times in movies and TV, you know, you see these kids that don't actually seem like real children, and they brought
What
that.
Disney Channel thing did you get carved out of and then accidentally
Yeah,
carried
it's just
around
very
into the
like
world?
uncomfortable.
You should have
sometimes.
stayed in the TV.
Yeah, stay in the. Yeah, that can be weird, you know.
Well, you kind of have to be a great actress to do especially what she's doing in this movie. I mean, she actually has a lot of heavy lifting as an actress in this film.
Yeah, I mean, she wasn't messing around. I mean, she was very funny between takes, and she was very sort of holding court in her charming way, but she was also dead serious and genuinely scary and, you know, totally believable while acting with her.
And now your character is a kind of, we open the movie and you and your daughters have a fake pseudo séance kind of business going on.
Yeah, we have I guess I'm a psychic fraud, but my character believes that she's doing a service for people that have lost loved ones, and she's sort of giving people hope and making them feel better, people who are grieving, and she has no other way to earn a living, and so she sort of employs her daughters to help her in these seances that she performs out of the house.
Now, I have to ask, I feel like sometimes shooting a horror movie is a lot like shooting a comedy in the sense that when you're shooting a comedy, no one laughs. Like, no one can laugh on set, so you don't know if what you're doing is actually particularly funny. You're just sort of relying on your director to be like, that was really good.
Yeah.
When you're doing a horror movie, is it kind of the same thing, or do you get a sense, is an atmosphere created on set where you do kind of get into a sort of zone that feels a little bit haunting or a little creepy?
Well, in this case, we were lucky in that we had Mike Flanagan, who's a great director, but also understands all the horror elements and is really into the acting part of making movies, which is not always the case. So we were shooting in a creepy, weird house in Highland Park in Los Angeles, and there was all kinds of sort of weird, spooky elements. Like, we weren't on a sanitized sort of soundstage, so it was already an evocative location. But I wasn't, you know, at work you're surrounded by 100 people. The problem is when you go home at the end of the night and you're suddenly alone in your house. And that was where I would be like, then I would have to take an Ativan, you know, like just suddenly feeling weird.
Right, like all day you were doing stuff around ghosts and thinking about ghosts, and then when it's time to actually be alone, oh, are ghosts actually real? I don't know.
Yeah, as rational as I would like to believe I am, I think at the end of the day, it's 11 o'clock and I've been pretending all day, and suddenly I can't go to, you know, you hear something, a dog barks, and your imagination can take over. I think it's part of just being in the world of a horror movie all day for weeks on end.
Now, the cool thing about this movie is that it's not just that it's a period piece, but the director, Mike Flanagan, also shoots it of that period of time as well. It feels like it was kind of shot in the sort of, I know it takes place in the 60s, but it feels almost like a movie that was made in the 70s, in the way that he uses zoom lenses and the way that he establishes the period. Was that something that was explained to you or pitched to you as part of the movie? Or?
Yes, he and the cinematographer, Fimignari, were so excited because they were getting to play with all these elements. I wish he was here so he could discuss it, because I'm so ignorant of that kind of film stuff. But I was aware when we were shooting it of what they were doing, and it's so cinematic. It just takes the whole movie to another level.
Yeah, absolutely. You're a part of another a series right now. Joe Swanberg has this amazing series on Netflix called Easy. He's primarily known as someone who has a lot of improvisation on his set, his show, and his shows and his movies. Well, this is his first show. His movies are mostly improvised. Can you talk at all about your episode?
It was the most fun thing I've ever done. I mean, it was my friend and I. Michael Chernus plays my husband, who we went to drama school together 20 years ago. So he's like my brother, and we played husband and wife, and it was all improvised. But there was an outline of a story, and basically playing two people who've been married for a long time and don't really want to have sex anymore. And how do you, it's an age-old story. But there's a theme running through that is like about masculinity and manhood and sex, and this idea that, you know, men are sort of emasculated in the modern world, and it's making people not want to have sex. And so sort of exploring these ideas of what it is to be a man and what is it really women really want versus what they say they want, or I mean, I don't purport to have the answer, but it
Or
was
like, what do we really want versus what we're sort of taught and told that we want? You know?
this like politically correct version of a way that we all say we want to be treated, but is there more to it than that? And you know, it's a very complicated, confusing thing that's really even just so hard to talk about between men and women. And so it was an interesting idea to explore because my character on the show is the breadwinner, and my husband's character is not the breadwinner, and she doesn't want to have sex with him, basically, and you know, is trying to, and it's just it's complicated.
And did you have an improvisational background at all? Had you done anything like that before?
No, I mean, I've done a little bit of improvising in movies and things, or acting class from 100 years ago, but I had never done it, and I always had wanted to do it. And he makes it so easy because it's actually very easy to do when you know what the scene is, and it just gives you so much freedom.
Did you get any moments where you sort of hit a speed bump while you were doing it, or?
No, because you kind of can't. There's no wrong. There's sort of no mistakes, or mistakes can be even more interesting if you sort of give yourself the freedom to go anywhere you want to go. I mean, this tough stuff was doing sex scenes with like one of my oldest, dearest friends, which was just, it was like making out, you know, with your brother. But we thought that was kind of interesting because they've been married for so long that it's almost like a brother-sister relationship.
Was that why the two of you were cast together? Did he know that you had like a prior relationship?
He didn't
or a
even
friendship?
know. No, that was so interesting. Is that Joe had no idea, and as soon as he cast him, I said, you know, we've known each other for like 20 years, and we're very good friends.
And he was like, all right.
Yeah, it was kind of great.
I did it. I got a sixth sense for these things.
He really does. I mean, the way he, interestingly enough, auditions is he does an audition, he talks to you for a really long time. We Skyped or FaceTime, whatever, for maybe an hour and a half or 2 hours, and you just talk about a lot of very intimate sort of, it doesn't have to be intimate, but you end up sharing a lot, and he does as well, and you sort of get to know each other, and then that's really your audition.
That's so interesting. I could imagine some actors kind of being turned off by that because it's kind of like, can I just show up and do my job? Like, why do I have to go through this with you?
Which I can respect. I mean, I get that. But I'm very interested in a lot of the same themes and ideas that Joe's interested in, and I just have always wanted to work with him, and I think his films are so interesting, and his way of seeing the world is like, I would have just killed to work with him. So I was thrilled to just chat even.
I want to bring up another part that you had just a couple years ago. You were in the final season of Mad Men, which was massive. You only were in 2 episodes, really, but I feel like it's kind of an iconic character because of where they placed you in the season and your relationship with Dawn. How did that come about?
Well, it was funny because I had to keep it a secret for over a year, I think. I signed a non-disclosure agreement.
Because they shot the entire season at one time and then
they
split it up into 2, yeah.
Exactly. So I had to like lie to everybody in my life, like my mom and my best friend, who we used to sit and watch Mad Men together, and I had to like not tell him I was shooting it. It was the weirdest. It was just so many lies.
Wait, did you actually sit with him and watch it when?
No, he ended up going to the premiere. He invited me to go to the Mad Men, and I was like, I can't go because I wasn't allowed to go, but I didn't tell him that. And then he like texted me halfway through, like, you bitch, what are you, what's going on? You know, he was very freaked out. It was hard. It was a hard lie to keep, but it was such an incredible experience. I mean, that was an audition where they don't tell you anything. They don't tell you what the character is or who the other characters are. It's all very secret because that show was such a big deal. And but it was really interesting because I could tell from the writing that it was with Don Draper because it's just the way he speaks is so specific.
So they don't like put Don's name; they put like Gary
like
or something.
Jimmy John or something, and then you're like,
it was just like some bad cover for Don, like John Grapper or something. Like, I think
exactly.
this is
It's
I think this is for Don here.
Yeah, it was pretty clear because he's just no one speaks like he does.
And so you get on set. You've been watching the show, as you said. You know, you watched it since the beginning, or you watched it all the time. What did it feel like being on that set?
It was very hard at first because when you're a fan of something, it just makes you act weird around that thing. Or me, I just was so nervous being around John Hamm because I was like a huge fan. And so my tactic was I was just going to ignore him because I thought that would be better than being like a total weirdo. And since my character kind of had to like...
He's such a nice guy.
He's the nicest guy. And he was so nice to me and so wonderful to work with. But I just knew that I was going to make shit weird if I tried to talk to him. So I ignored him. And my character sort of had to own him in a way, like in this sort of power dynamic. You know, she's like, let's go into the alley and, you know, do it, basically. So I had to find a way to be able to say to John Hamm, like...
I didn't mean to laugh. Do it is just like a funny phrase.
Make love. No.
Worse.
Have sex. You could just simplify it. So I had to find a way to convince myself that I could be able to say to John Hamm, hey, let's meet in the alley and have sex. And so the only way for me to do that was to just ignore him.
How did he respond to that? Was he like, what the hell? I'm the star of the show.
I think he was probably thrilled, actually. I mean, because the other thing is when you're a guy, like you've been on a show and you're a star and you're the guy, everyone's always trying to talk to you, I think. And so it was probably a relief. At least this is what I was telling myself.
Mm-hmm. And what was it like working with Matthew Weiner?
The best. I mean, he's the dream of dreams of who you want to work with. I mean, because it's all this... It's very holistic. It's all, I mean, he's so involved in every aspect. I mean, I had hair and makeup tests for a 2-episode arc. That never happens. That just never, ever, ever happens. And I had extensive
It's a
fittings.
very important 2-episode arc, I will say. I mean, it's not as if there is like a massive repercussion, really, based off of your character, but there's a really heavy symbolic aspect of your character in that season. And it sort of means so much for the entire 7 seasons or 6 seasons of that show.
Well, yeah, it was a big part of the conclusion, and so it was obviously very important that we get it right, and, you know, it sets up the whole rest of that season. And, I mean, it was an interesting experience because also some people really hated me for being that person, and that was also interesting because, you know, fans, I get it because I'm such a fan. When I'm a fan, I'm like I have a real opinion about everything. So that was also interesting.
What do you mean? I didn't realize that there was a heavy criticism.
Well, why am I bringing it up then?
You brought it up.
Like, people hated me. No, there were just some people that were like, well, we only have so much time left.
Oh, why introduce? I remember this now.
This?
Why are we introducing new characters?
Which I
We're trying to wrap
get.
everything up.
Yeah.
Right. But Don, very briefly, I'll get my interpretation. Don is such a man of firsts, and that is introduced to him as the woman that he dates before he gets married, the woman who's sort of his equal, says to him when he breaks up with her, you are only a man of beginnings. You have no interest, nor can you control what happens in the middle or even get to the end. You're just good at beginnings. And so it made total sense to me in that season why a new person would be brought up for him to be obsessed with.
Yeah, and also who she is. I mean, she's sort of the female Don Draper in a way. I mean, she has this grief and this past that she's left behind, and you know, from the moment they meet, it's as if they already knew each other. So it made all the sense in the world to me, but you know, it's always interesting to see how people respond.
Do you think at all that, I know that the director of Ouija had said that he had seen you in something else, but do you think that he had seen you in Mad Men as well and thought that you fit really well within that time visually?
I hadn't thought about it, but probably. Mm-hmm. I mean, I could just text him and ask him, but I don't know.
How long was the shoot for Ouija?
I think it was 6 weeks.
Oh, wow.
Maybe less. Once when you go into a movie like that, it's like time stops and your life stops for however long you're doing it, and then you come back into the world and try to learn how to, behave again.
Why is it that your life stops? Just because you're sort of so focused on this one thing for?
Yeah, I mean, you don't have the time. You have no time. You have no excess energy for anything. And also this kind of a movie where you're like crying and screaming and being terrified and worried, and you don't do anything else. So then it ends, and you're like sitting on your couch, like, why is no one bringing me a coffee? Like, what's happening? No, I would get my own coffee, but you know what I mean.
Let's open it up to the audience for a question or two. Who has a
Hey.
question?
Hi.
So the film looks absolutely terrifying.
Oh,
I
good.
can't wait to see it. So I have two fun questions for you. Because Halloween's around the corner, what's your favorite Halloween memory? And because you said in the film you play a supernatural scam artist in a way, what are your thoughts of Miss Cleo?
Of what?
Miss Cleo?
What's Miss Cleo?
So she was this.
Didn't she just
Yeah,
pass?
she died recently, but like she
So
was.
you have good thoughts about her.
Yeah, well, she was, she had an infomercial, and she's like, "Call me now," like, and would talk
She
about
was like
being a
a-
Libra.
She was like
Yeah.
an infomercial psychic from the 90s, I would say, maybe a little after. And she was had a Caribbean accent, and her name was Miss Cleo. I'm not going to do an accent. Sorry. I started, and now I feel really,
Don't
really
do that.
racist and bad.
Yeah,
Sorry.
don't do that. I don't know. I mean, that stuff is always fascinating to me. I think there are people that are truly psychic, and truly there are, some that are just frauds like me. What was the first question?
The first question was, what are your Halloween? What?
Great Halloween memory. I actually
yeah.
have one here in New York that I remember, and I don't even remember what I was. I just remember I went to a party on the Lower East Side. This guy Zog had the party, and it was like this dance party. It was, the last time I probably got like really, really intoxicated, and
What were you dressed up as?
I don't know. I have no idea.
Really
I mean,
intoxicated.
like, I was with Elizabeth Banks, and I don't remember anything else except that I was dancing and like had one of the all-time great nights in New York.
You were with Elizabeth Banks?
Yeah.
Have you been friends with her for a long time?
Yeah, we've met years ago at Williamstown Theater Festival, and we were both doing plays, and we stayed in touch, and she's very busy, so I don't get to see her very often, but once in a while we hook up for Halloween and just burn it down.
Tear it up at Zog's. Next question.
Hi, thanks for being here.
Hi, thank
I'm
you.
a really big fan of your work, and also I love your outfit.
Oh, thank you.
I was wondering, is acting in a horror movie any different than acting for another genre?
I didn't treat it as such just because it's not how I approach acting, I guess, but I kept reminding myself actually that my character doesn't know she's in a horror movie, because it helped me to, I think what was most important for the director and for me was that it be as real as possible, because that's what makes it scary, because he wanted to sort of draw in the audience by making people believe in these characters and care about them. And so we were just sort of playing scenes as we would play any other scenes, and then just kind of takes off from there. I feel like so much of horror movies is how they shoot it, and a lot of that has nothing to do with me. So I was just kind of in my own little acting world.
I think we have time for one more question.
Hi.
Hi.
I wanted to know, have you ever played with a Ouija board or any type of horror type of games? And if you have any experience, could you tell us?
When I was a kid, we would always play with Ouija boards at slumber parties and, get scared and then giggle about it. I want nothing to do with it. Like, it freaks me out.
That was kind of my question with this movie and with Ouija boards in general. It's trademarked, the board is trademarked and it's part of the movie, but who would watch this movie and go buy a Ouija board afterwards? It's not a great commercial for Ouija boards. Like, they do the Ouija board and fucking terrible things happen.
Yeah. So, no, I wondered the same thing, but I think I think people are just into being scared. I think it's exciting to be scared. I just got a little too close to it. I mean, you saw that kid. She's so scary. She really committed. So, I mean, it's sometimes because I've seen it a few times and I just can't believe what she's doing.
Yeah, she does amazing stuff. And the older daughter is great as well.
Oh, she's amazing. Annalise is who's my older daughter, is a really great actress, and just such a sweetheart. I mean, and I don't like kids normally, but I like love these kids. They're so great.
Is that true? You're not a big kids person?
I mean, normally it's annoying because you have to shoot around their schedule. They work like 3 hours a day.
So it's more of a professional thing.
Yes,
It's not like
well, sometimes it's also they're annoying, you know? I mean, like, they're not always the most fun people to be around.
Stage kids.
Yeah.
Not or any.
No, I have nephews and they're the greatest.
Right.
But I wouldn't want to be on a movie set with them, you know?
I imagine stage kids are always kind of like that character that's on SNL that reads the news and sings it. And
Yes, it's the worst. And they're always like on a
Hello.
diet, and it's like a 5-year-old on a diet, and you just want to, you know, it's too upsetting. But
my dad says I have an audition later. Excuse me.
yeah, well, that's the other thing. They always have like more auditions than you, and they're like, they're like, oh, I have to go shoot something else, and you're like, get the fuck out of here. You know, it's like.
Could somebody
needs
get me a
that?
green tea? My throat hurts.
Yeah. So these kids were I mean, they were just like, they hang out all the time, the two kids, and I'm always kind of like, I want to hang out with them, but it's too weird because I'm like 41, so it's just not appropriate.
So you were the outsider on set,
Yeah.
like just trying to get out of here.
Yeah, I try to act like I wasn't into it, but I was. But I had Henry at least. I had Henry Thomas, who's the greatest.
It's true. Henry Thomas, who plays, who's Elliot in E.T., is in this film.
He's so good.
It's amazing to see him. I was telling you backstage that as soon as he appears on screen, I was like, Elliot.
Well, I mean, that might have been the first movie, Elliot. He's like such a sweetheart about it too, but I was so careful not to bring it up for the first few weeks, but
At any point did you want to go over to him and be like, you're killing him?
Yeah, there was a lot of moments where I'd just be in the scene with him and freaking out because that was, I think, the first movie I ever saw, and I just think he's so brilliant. I mean, if you haven't seen it, you got to see it.
E.T.?
Yeah, I mean, there are people that haven't seen
true,
it.
that's right, we were talking
I'm
about
saying younger people.
Is there anyone in this audience who hasn't seen E.T.? Raise your hand. Get out.
I mean,
Go watch E.T.
Oh, it's so great.
Elizabeth, when can people see Ouija Origin of Evil?
This Friday.
This Friday.
21st, yeah.
Congratulations. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.